On today's C3 restoration video, we are going to begin work on stripping the frame completely down. We have a lot to do. We got to get the engine, the trans out. We need to drain the gas tank, get that out. We need to get this down to a completely bare frame so I can get it out to sandblasting. Now, I'm borrowing a cherry picker from my fiance's neighbor, so we're going to leave the engine and the trans in for now, but we are going to go ahead and start working on getting these fuel lines out and also draining the gas tank. And then later, probably tomorrow, I'll get that cherry picker and we can get that all out. Okay, here is the setup. We have a transfer pump. Right now I just have it open. We have the hose going into the gas tank and then coming over here, and we have a little bit of a siphon effect going on. So I don't know if you can see the gas coming through, but there's gas coming through. It's slow, but we will let this just fill up. This is only a 5-gallon gas tank or gas can. So we will fill this up way before this empties, because this was about halfway full, so it probably has like 10 gallons in it, I think. Roughly, I think this is a 20-gallon tank. So we have a good amount of gas to get out of here. I do have another gas can up there, so hopefully we will have enough to get all this out. That gas can is already full. Now I do want to go ahead and remove this guy, and just so we can kind of get an idea of how much gas is actually in here. So let's go ahead and just pop this off so we can get a better view in there. All right, you guys want a little view here? It looks beautiful in there. Like really freaking nice. There is some sediment, which is to be expected. But man, that thing is clean. Not 1 ounce of rust. I am really happy with pretty much everything I've found on this car so far. Like the frame, amazing. Gas tank, really good shape. Obviously the outside is a little bit gross, but it's not even that bad. It's all fixable. Yeah, there's not even really rust underneath this. We can just hit this with a Scotch-Brite and hit it with some black paint, and this thing will look brand freaking new. And then we will also clean out the inside, but it doesn't even really need cleaned. It's not bad. We can just wash that sediment out and it will be good. So let's go ahead and finish draining this guy. I just wanted to be able to see in there so we know how much gas is left, because I want to try to get all of it out if possible. So let's do it. I got the tank about 90% empty, and then I put the gas lid back on and whatnot and just tighten down a few bolts. That way it'll block some of the vapors and the whole garage won't smell like gasoline. So now the next thing we're gonna do is work on getting the gas tank out. And from what I see, it kind of looks like we need to gain access to some stuff underneath here, and I think the best way to do that would be remove this for the spare tire. So we'll remove that first, and we won't even be using it. And I know this might sound crazy, but I'm sure some of you guys own C3s, and with the rear end, you have a good amount of space where you see back. And before I would see the spare tire, I'm talking about when the car's on the ground, by the way, and I was thinking some twin turbos would fit back there pretty nicely. That's gonna be way in the future. For now, we're just doing the LS swap. But later on, I think some twins would look real nice back there. Anyway, sorry, getting a little distracted, daydreaming. But let's go ahead and start removing this stuff for the spare tire, and then we'll get this gas tank out of here. Okay, so I got everything removed, I believe, in order to get this guy off. These fuel lines, I did bend them out of the way, and I will be running new AN lines throughout the car, so I won't be utilizing these. That's why I bent it. This guy, I believe, is for the evap system. So again, I'm probably not gonna reuse it. So I'm not really that worried about bending it. Okay, so now, all we should have to do is pop these straps out. Yep. Okay. There we go. I believe they should. Yep. Pop free like so. Let's go ahead and just take the straps out. It looks like it's just kind of like hooked in. Maybe. Yep. Okay. Pull this guy out now. Nice. So we will be keeping these guys. They're in good shape and reusing them. So if you guys see me being destructive, it's because I'm replacing the stuff. So that's why with the wiring, I just cut it, because this car is getting all new wiring. There's no point in me trying to save it. Granted, I did save some of the pigtails, because some of those I don't want to have to buy new. But even some of those are trash. All right, now the gas tank should be completely free, and I should be able to just pick her up. Nice. And it's not super heavy. Definitely has some gas in there still. Let's kick those straps. But it is not like 200 pounds. It would have been really heavy to lift before emptying some of that gas. So we definitely removed like probably 5 or 6 gallons out of there. Maybe even more. Let's go ahead and just start pulling the rest of these fuel lines and get them out of the way. And then after that, we will start tackling some stuff up here, getting this sorted. I know we have brake lines and whatnot we could pull potentially, which I'm gonna be saving those. I think I already mentioned that before, and then we can start kind of prepping for getting the engine out, I suppose, too. I went ahead and flipped the frame around so that we have some more room. So now the engine is on this side of the garage. I got the engine hoist. So all that is left now is we have a few things to disconnect. I believe it's really just motor mounts. And then we have the transmission right here. I'm gonna call it the transmission mount or cross member, but really it's just this guy right here, I believe. Down below that we need to get. The exhaust, so not a whole lot. I think first we'll start with the exhaust. That'll give us a little bit more room to see what we're working with the cross member transmission mount situation. And then, and we also will have some power steering lines. So we'll have to deal with those too. We'll probably slide a bucket underneath there and just let it drain. But yeah, let's go ahead and start working. Let's get this exhaust off. Before we get this exhaust off, I need to show you the state of it. So first of all, yeah, this is just dangling here. The bolts just slide right out, not even attached. The other side is attached, but interesting, right? Now, let me show you my favorite part, which I noticed when I cut off the mufflers to get some more room for moving the rear bumper. Yeah. This thing was flowing really good, you guys. It's definitely not having any flow issues at all. Yeah, this thing was a horrible exhaust system. There we go. Exhaust is off. I'm just gonna leave it where it lies for now. That was really easy. It was just some bolts and made it really easy considering I didn't even have to worry about one side for the flange. Now, let's go ahead and take a peek at the transmission situation. It's probably just a bolt or two that we need to remove. And then we also have the drive shaft, which I will look up a video on how to do that properly. I'm hoping I don't need to go and buy anything. I don't know. Miata drive shaft was very different than that. Yeah, it looks like it's just going to be some bolts here. Let's see if you guys can take a look. There we go. Looks like it's just 2 bolts. Holding that on. So that's nice and easy. Sorry, I'm sure that made some of you guys sick, moving the camera around like that. Let's go ahead and I'm going to look up how to get the drive shaft out first before we remove the transmission. I don't know. I've never dealt with a drive shaft like this, so this is going to be interesting. Good learning experience. Okay, we're going to have to take a break from trying to do the drive shaft, but I learned that basically you can remove this right here. It's the strap. So I need a 1/4 inch 12-point socket. And then that way I can get in there and get this out. Now, we're going to take a break from that because I need to go to the store and get that socket. And I also need to go to the store and get some grade 8 bolts right here because I got a little plate, it's over there, that will go right here on the intake manifold so that I can lift from right here. But I need to get some grade 8 bolts, and I also need to figure out what length. So we're going to go ahead and pull this carburetor off right now so that way we can get an idea of what we need. So let's get this puppy off. Okay, it's a bit later. I got the hardware. It is all grade 8 hardware. We have grade 8 washers and then a bolt. So this should be plenty strong enough and secure enough to lift the engine and trans out. This says that it can lift 1,000 pounds safely, which I bet you this combination right here is close to 1,000, probably a bit under. If I had to guess, probably like 800. That's my guess. What do you guys think? And I got some bad news about the drive shaft. So it seems like the best way to do it is to remove these straps right here. So you have to have a 1/4 inch 12-point socket. I don't have that. And I think I'm just going to grind off these bolts, to be honest with you. Just grind off the bolt head and then we can just pull the strap off and call it a day. Okay, that was not fun, but it's done. And I didn't destroy the yoke or anything like that. It's right here. I do have to get the bolts out, which honestly shouldn't be that bad. There's a good amount of room. We actually might be able to get vice grips on them or something. But yeah, unfortunate I had to do that, but is what it is. We can get these out though. It's savable. Now I want to go ahead and tackle these power steering lines. I think what I'm going to do, it looks like there's just a few going to the pump right here. 2, it looks like. We can loosen that hose right there and have it dump into a bucket. And then looks like that guy leads down here, but I don't know if we can really get that off. So we might just disconnect it all from right here and call it good. So let's go ahead and get that done. And then all that's left is the transmission mount and the motor mounts. And then we can get this puppy up in the air and out. Alrighty, so the power steering fluid is draining and we have all the lines disconnected. Now we only have 2 things left, the motor mounts and the transmission mount. So let's go ahead and undo these bolts going into the transmission, and then we will get the engine hoist hooked up, and then we will get these motor mounts out. We are really close, and we'll probably have this engine out in the next, like, I don't know, 10 minutes, as long as these motor mounts aren't too much of a pain to get to. I don't think they will be. Looks like we can get right behind the headers here. Ugh, that actually does kind of look like a bit of a pain. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we don't have to pull the headers. If we do, at least it's right there and we don't have to dig for them. So let's do it. Okay, we are all hooked up. I'm gonna go ahead and get these motor mounts disconnected, and then we should be ready to pull the engine and tranny, I hope. I don't think anything else is connected, and if it is, I guess we'll tackle it as it shows up.
in audio, in audio.
Okay, it is the next day. The engine is sold. I have the transmission over there in the corner, which hopefully that'll be sold within this next week. I do have someone interested, but you never know with Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes people flake. And check out what I got. A 12-point quarter-inch socket. So we can go ahead and remove the rest of this drive shaft. I didn't want to have to grind these ones down. There's no point. I mean, I can just get the socket, which that's what I did. I just needed the engine out that night, so that's why I grinded those down. Also, didn't damage the yoke at all. I think I said that before, but let's go ahead and completely remove this drive shaft, and then after that, we're gonna get this frame up on jack stands and start tearing it apart. All right, the drive shaft is out. Now we're gonna go ahead and jack up the frame and just start tearing it apart.
In audio, in audio.
Okay, so last night I got a lot done. We got the calipers off. We got all the brake lines off, which unfortunately I was gonna reuse them, but they just weren't breaking free. And it was just kind of a sign to me, you know what, I'm just gonna replace them. It's like 150 bucks. It's not the end of the world. So I just cut them up and threw them away. Calipers I'm gonna rebuild and whatnot, but we are getting close. I'm gonna have this frame completely stripped down by today, and then hopefully Tuesday, Wednesday, we can get it out to the sandblaster. Now, I wanna show you guys something. For these springs, I was reading that it's kind of annoying to use the traditional spring compressors. I think you still can, but apparently it's a little bit of a pain. So what I did, which I saw this on a forum, is I'm making my own, sort of. So I have a giant long piece of all thread, and then I have this just nice thick piece of metal. It's a bracket I found. It's steel. It's really strong. And then we have some big old nuts and some washers, and a big old nut on this side and some washers as well. The people I was seeing, they were using small nuts, but in my mind, the more threads you have attached, the better it's gonna be, and we're gonna have a lot of force going against these threads. And the last thing I want it to do is give out and, well, have a spring fly at me. So what we're gonna do is remove the shock, and then we should be able to just feed this in and compress the spring, and then we can slowly let out the tension in the spring with this. We don't have to do it fast. So let's go ahead and get this shock out and go from there.
Audio.
Okay, super easy to get the shock out. Just a nut and some bolts. So now what we're gonna do is get our contraption in there. I'm not gonna cut this all thread down. We will just leave it full length. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to cut it down, but I'm okay with spending some time threading. So it'll probably be faster to just thread it than have to deal with removing all that. Okay, so we are gonna go like this. Let's see if, first of all, we need to check and make sure that this washer is big enough. But basically it'll go like that. Yep, this washer is big enough, covers the hole. Now we're gonna just thread this guy down. Probably want to get it to pretty good. It's gonna be sticking out a good amount. But like I said, I don't really care. It doesn't take that long to thread it down. Okay, a little more. Okay. Okay, now that the all thread is all in, I could drill a new hole in the center here, but after looking at it, it looks like there's plenty of room on each side to safely just put it through either one of these holes. So we're gonna go ahead, stick it through the lowest part of the spring we can. Lift this guy up a little. We might need to go up one more. This guy will be better. Yep, now, yeah, no matter what, it would have to move quite a bit for it to even almost slip out, but even then it shouldn't. Okay, so now I have the other washers and the other nut. Whoa. That's kind of, you know what? Let's just stick it through all the way right now. Make my life even easier. There we go, now we got access from the bottom. Okay, slide our washers on and thread the nut on. There we go. Okay, actually, you know what? I want to use a long socket on this. So let's unthread it a little bit. So we can use a deep socket on the bottom here. We're not going to use any guns to draw this in, but there we go. Okay, then we'll go up here. Boom. There we go. Now that should be pretty good. and allow us to suck this spring up a little bit. So let's go ahead and get a wrench on here, and then we'll get a ratchet and a deep socket on this and just snug this up a little bit. And then I'll do a time lapse, take off some of this stuff because we're gonna have to probably separate this upper ball joint, lower ball joint, and then we can get the knuckle off. Or I guess this is a spindle. So let's do it.
Audio. In 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 audio.
Oh man, you guys, what have I done to the garage? I absolutely destroyed it. I need to get better with my work environment. I start a project, absolutely make a mess, and then once I'm done with the project, clean, and then start a new project and just destroy the garage again. I need to get better as cleaning up as I go and staying organized. But anyhow, we have all the suspension and everything stripped. There's only a few things left on the frame. We have the cross member, that little strap guy, not strap, but bar for the gas tank, and then like the crash bar thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the garage and then pull all that stuff off camera because I had been filming a lot for this. So yeah, but we made some good progress, you guys. It is a few days later. The frame is completely stripped. I brought it outside, pressure washed it, and hit it with degreaser. It took me about like 2 hours of pressure washing and degreasing, but we got it to an acceptable point for sandblasting. And I also went ahead and washed the body up. So I did a lot of pressure washing on it and degreased the whole body, the underside. There's still a lot of grime I'm gonna have to scrape off with a razor on the underside, but we got the body pretty freaking clean. The interior does not smell like a 50-year-old car anymore. It smells like nothing, which is fantastic. Well, this wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching to the very end. I really appreciate it. In the next video, we're gonna begin body work, which I'm really looking forward to. But anyhow, again, thank you for watching.